The Tennis Gambling Podcast and the Sports Gambling Podcast Network is brought to you by Game Time, your home for the lowest price last-minute tickets. Download the Game Time app today and use promo code SGPN for $20 off. We're also brought to you by Underdog Fantasy. Sign up today using promo code SGPN, then go to sportsgamepodcast.com/dog to enter our bonus contest. 5 winners will receive shirts, hats, and a $50 SGPN gift card. We're also brought to you by Hall of Fame Bet, sports betting research platform for parlays, player props, and game lines. Download the Hall of Fame Bets app or visit HOPEBets.com. Use code SGPN to get 50% off your first month and start making smarter bets today. And welcome, everybody, to the Tennis Gambling Podcast here on the Sports Gambling Podcast Network. It is currently early Saturday morning, February 24th, currently roughly 3 a.m. Eastern Time. And I'm your host, always, Scott Reichel, once again going solo for this pod. Very early episode or late, depending on where you are in the world. But either way, point is we have 3 matches to talk about. We have the final in Doha and the 2 semifinal matches in Rio. A reminder, though, before we get into the actual recap of the Thursday matches, of the Friday matches, and the preview for the Saturday matches, want to remind everybody to hit the like button and subscribe on YouTube. Also, a reminder, if you're listening to this on Spotify or Apple, that's fine. Just remember to leave a rating and a review. Also, a reminder to check out the merch store on the SGPN website for Tennis Gambling Podcast merch. We got t-shirts, we got mugs, etc., to support the show. Now, a couple of reasons why we are having this episode pretty late. First reason, same rant as yesterday. You ended up seeing the odds makers take their sweet time posting the lines on the Navoni and Norrie match. Why? I have no idea. The match ended, I don't even know how long ago, 6 hours ago, 7 hours ago, whatever. And the odds makers continued to just wait. And as a result, I had to find the line offshore once again about 6 hours after the match, which I thought was insane. But either way, point is I had to sit there and wait for odds on the final semifinal matchup in Rio. Plus, another reason was the actual marathon that took place between Zverev and Thompson, which just ended. So I'm going to recap that match in a second. But that match took about 3 hours and 40 minutes. It was an epic, and that kind of was distracting and preventing me from actually doing the show. So either way, point is time to get into the actual recap of the picks from yesterday's episode. Starting off with the lock, ended up having a nice winner with the over in the Mensik and Monfils match. Over 22.5 games, a minus 110. Went to 3 sets, was really never in doubt, as Monfils lost the first set, then immediately went up by a large amount in the second set, got a break immediately. Thought about maybe he was going to bagel in that second set, did not though, but he eventually won the set. And then the third set, Mensik came back and won, but either way, went over the total of 22.5 pretty easily. For the dog, kind of an annoying loss there with Norrie in straight sets of plus 105. Anytime you bet on a guy to win in straight sets, and he wins the first set 6-1, you got to like your chances, and then he ended up no-showing the second set, and then he killed Seaboth Wild in the third. So Norrie dominated the 2 sets that he won, but kind of took a nap there in the middle set, so he picked up a loss there. Norrie was the clear better player for most of the match, but things kind of just went haywire in that second set for him, and as a result, we picked up a loss. Still like the value at plus 105. He did win the match overall, but unfortunately could not get it done in straight sets. Now, moving on to the actual recap for the Friday matches. Starting off with the matches in Doha, you had Khachanov beating Popyrin, which I thought he would do so. I didn't think it would be in straight sets, though, or at least to go under the number with straight sets. I'm not shocked the first I went to a breaker. It was a marathon 14-12. Khachanov got it done, though, and then Popyrin was completely out of gas as Khachanov ended up winning via double break in the second set as he won 6-2. Now, that's good for us because Khachanov is an outright that we have, so we do have one outright in Doha. We also have one outright in Rio. Unfortunately, Zverev did lose. He was our lone outright left in Los Cabos, so we have no outrights left for the final between Ruud and between Zverev. But Khachanov there, so hopefully he gets it done. He cashes us a nice outright ticket. Moving on, though, for the Rio tournament, unlike the previous days, you saw a bunch of marathon matches. In fact, every single match in Rio, all 4, went to 3 sets. In fact, if you want to include Los Cabos and Doha, you had a total of 8 matches yesterday, and 6 of the 8 ended up going to 3 sets. The other 2 had breakers and ended in straight sets. So a lot of competitive tennis yesterday, which was a lot of fun to witness. Either way, though, for the actual recaps in Rio, Cerundolo got it done against Lajovic, got off to a slow start, but then ended up getting back on track. Did like the over in that match, so that ended up working out pretty well. And Lajovic did cover the spread, so that also worked out in general. So I had a pretty good read on the match in general. Thought Cerundolo was the more talented player, and he seemed like he's been really up and down based on sets. He's been really bad in some sets, really good in others, and the good outweighed the bad in that 3-set match against Lajovic. Then you had Baez against Montero, where the first set was competitive. Baez fought off a couple break points early, then opened up a love 40 return game, which resulted in a break. Held on and ended up winning the first set 6-4. Then he almost got bageled in the second set, complete 180, as Montero took over the second set. And then Baez woke up again, and Montero kind of ran out of gas, as Baez did win in 3. Moving on, you had the Norrie match, which I mentioned before. Pretty annoying. The 2 sets he won were 6-1 and 6-2. Ruined the 2-0, though, as he no-showed the middle set, as Seabolt Wild did not leave empty-handed, but still lost. In the last match, you had Fonseca, who I was actually wrong about for the odds. I thought he might be a favorite in that match, because when we did the recording, we couldn't keep waiting for the odds to drop. He was actually a dog in this match, and apparently rightfully so. Got off to a good start, won the first set 6-2, then ended up losing the final 2 sets 6-3. So nice run there for Fonseca, 17-year-old, going to be a very solid player for many years to come. But unfortunately, the Cinderella run at home ended up ending as Navoni got the job done. So Brazil had 3 players in the quarters in Rio, and they all lost in 3 sets. Not ideal for the home crowd. I'm going to tell you right now, though, in the semis, I'm going to be really annoyed if Navone wins this event, because I gave him out to win Cordoba, and he did not do so. So that ended up, I guess I ended up picking up the wrong tournament. I guess it's different because this one wasn't like Diaz Acosta, who actually won the event right after Cordoba. The point is, though, I've had a decent read on these young Argentinians who I thought can pose some threats on clay, and I picked the wrong tournament, but Navone made a good run, and we'll see if he can extend that despite being a massive underdog against Norrie on Saturday. Now, moving on to the final 2 matches in Los Cabos, you had Ruud beating Tsitsipas in straight sets, 6-4, 7-6. And I'm going to save the Thompson match for kind of its own section, because that was an all-timer. So it's really a story of Tsitsipas' career. I've mentioned it several times, and I'm going to say it once again. Tsitsipas, the real issue with his game, you could argue it's the one-handed backhand with the unforced errors. Maybe that's connected. It's really just the mental aspect of his game, which I think is severely lacking. And I do think you're looking at a spot where I just think at the end of the day, Tsitsipas tends to fall apart in big points, and he had a lot of chances against Ruud to potentially force a third set, could not do so, as you ended up seeing Tsitsipas have 3 separate set points in the 4-5 service game, then had 2 separate set points in the 5-6 service game for Ruud, and he couldn't get it done. It just seemed like Tsitsipas was constantly threatening late in that second set, and he kept blowing all the big points. So kind of a standard Tsitsipas loss, just based on him against good competition. Defending champion, so I do believe he was a slight favorite. I think it was around -110 on each player, but Tsitsipas might have been a slight favorite in some spots. Point is, though, it was a pretty even match. Ruud was better on the big moments, and that was the story of the match. And I also forgot to mention, by the way, Mensik got the job done against Monfils. Mentioned it before with the lock recap, but he won the first set, then kind of no-showed the second, and then woke up again for the third. So props to Mensik there for getting it done. But Thompson and Zverev. Now, normally, I can kind of group Zverev with Tsitsipas for the same mental blocks in their respective games. They struggle in big moments. We've seen Zverev choke before. I'm going to give Zverev a pass in this match, because this match was just simply put an epic. It was an all-timer, and even though he was the pretty decent favorite against Thompson, crazy run by Thompson, I'll mention that in a second. But the point is, Zverev, even though he's been known to fall apart in big moments in the past, he did fight off 5 match points while trying to stay alive in the 5-6 service game. He did so, then was out of gas, and he got killed in the breaker. But I'm not going to roast Zverev for falling apart. If he fought off 5 match points in the 5-6 game and then ended up losing in the breaker, he just ran out of gas. Thompson went into wall mode, and then he ended up losing in the breaker. I'm not going to fully roast any player for losing an epic like that. It was easily the best match of the year so far on the men's side. You can argue for the women's side if you want to mention the blink of a match against Rybakina, solely based on the tiebreaker, you can. But the point is, it was an all-timer. Definitely the match of the year. Probably the best match that I've seen since maybe, you can argue maybe the Sinner Djokovic Davis Cup match, or definitely the Alcaraz Djokovic Cincinnati match, which is still the best 3-set match I've ever seen. But it's up there as an all-timer. 3 hours and 40 plus minutes just to finish that match, which is crazy. So I'm not going to roast Zverev too much for it. Yes, we had an outright for him to win. Lost a 455 favorite. But Thompson just has alligator blood. He just refuses to go away. 3 hours and 40 minutes. I'm going to give Zverev a pass. Props to Thompson. I don't know how he's going to have any legs left for his final against Ruud. His legs probably feel like jello right now. They got the job done, and Zverev fell short. Thompson, though, has played for 10-plus hours on court. When you factor in the win against Zverev in 3 hours and 40 and the insane comeback against Mickelson, props to him. I mean, the amount of mental toughness that he's shown and just mental fortitude that he's shown for the last couple of nights in particular is all-time stuff. So shout out to Thompson. He's on a man on a mission. We'll see if he runs out of gas against Ruud. I'm not going to cover that match, though, in this episode because they're going to release the odds at like 7 a.m., and I can't wait that long. So that's why we're going to skip it, but props to Thompson. Wanted to at least mention that match in general. Now it's time to preview the actual matches in both Doha and in Rio for the Saturday card. But before we get into any of that, going to have a quick word from our sponsor. The Tennis Gambling Podcast and the Sports Gambling Podcast Network is we're brought to you by Game Time. I don't know about all of you, but I personally love attending sport events in person, and it used to be very annoying to actually find a ticketing platform that I could trust, but that changed once I found Game Time, because Game Time is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater near you. They have a lot of great features on the app, including my favorite feature, which is the images of seat views, which is very useful because I'm sure we've all been there before. You bought a ticket, you thought you were going to get a nice view of the action, and then you realize there's an obstruction, a pole, something in your way, and you realize that you just paid money for an event that you could barely see based on the seats that you got. That will not happen with Game Time because with this feature, you're able to see a preview of the view you would be getting if you ended up purchasing that seat. So you end up knowing exactly what view you're going to get before spending your hard-earned money. It's also worth mentioning that Game Time is the place for last-minute ticket deals. Forget plenty of months in advance. Game Time has deals on tickets right up to the day of the event. Get exclusive flash deals on tickets for football, basketball, baseball, concerts, theater, comedy, and more. And the Game Time guarantee also means you'll get the best price available every single time, because if you find tickets in the same section and row for less, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. So snag tickets without the stress with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code SGPN for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code SGPN for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. We're also brought to you by Underdog Fantasy. Underdog Fantasy has a way to plug inside for fantasy players all season long. NBA, NHL, soccer, and college basketball. Simply pick higher or lower on your favorite players' fantasy stats and cash in. And SGPN is currently teaming up with Underdog to give you even more of a bonus. Sign up between now and the end of the month, and 5 winners will receive an Underdog hat, an Underdog shirt, and a $50 SGPN gift card. Sign up today using promo code SGPN, and then go to sportsgamepodcast.com/dog to enter the contest for your chance to win. And when you sign up with the promo code SGPN, Underdog will double your first deposit up to $100. So Underdog Fantasy, promo code SGPN. Welcome back, everyone, to the Tennis Gambling Podcast. Just finished recapping the matches from Friday. Now it's time to get into the actual matches for Saturday. Now, starting off with the final in Doha, taking place between Khachanov and Mensik at roughly 10 a.m. Eastern Time. Look at the actual odds for this matchup. Khachanov is a pretty big favorite here as he's around minus 240 on the money line, where Mensik is around plus 200. For the game spread, Khachanov is minus 2.5 at minus 130. Mensik is plus 2.5 at plus 110. For the over-under, 22.5. The over is minus 120. The under is even money. For the set spread, you can find Khachanov in straight sets at plus 115. You can find Mensik to win a set at minus 145. Match to go 2-3 sets is plus 135. Now, Mensik has been on a very solid run. It's the deepest run he's ever made for an ATP event because this is his first ever ATP final. So we have seen a couple of first-time winners already this season, and Mensik is looking to add his name to that list. He's been really good so far in this event. Now, it was a pretty funny story. They asked him why he chose to go to Doha, and his answer was because they're going to give me a free iPhone. And that's apparently one of the perks of playing in Qatar. They got a lot of money over there in Qatar, and they gave every player who ended up playing in the event a free iPhone. Nice perk. That's why Mensik showed up, and now he's in a final. So that's a nice consolation prize, I guess. But the point is, you're looking at his overall path. Beat Fokina in straight sets, beat Murray in the 3-set marathon, beat Rublev in straight sets, and beat Monfils in 3 sets on Friday. As for Khachanov, he's had a much easier path because he has not dropped a set yet. Ended up beating Morozin in straight sets, played 3 games against Rusevori before Rusevori ended up getting injured and withdrew, and then he beat Papirin in straight sets on Friday. So you can argue maybe the moment will be too big for Mensik. I'm not going to buy that narrative because he looked really good in some big moments in that third set against Monfils. So I do think he's in line to look sharp once again. I find it interesting and kind of fitting, though, this is the matchup we're getting in the Doha final, because watching Mensik play over the week, and I've seen him play before. I had a couple of bets on him in the U.S. Open, and it actually worked out pretty well for me this past U.S. Open, but still, watching him play, I know the height's a bit different, he's younger. He reminds me a lot of Khachanov. I see a lot of similarities between these two players, and I do think that Mensik is going to blossom into a future top 20 guy, top 30 guy minimum in my eyes. But the point is, Mensik, I think, is in line for what can be a good showing. The main issue, though, is fatigue. He's been on the court for a long, long time. In addition to playing an extra match than Khachanov has, just for reference, he's played roughly 5 more hours on court than Khachanov has. So fatigue might be an issue. We saw it kind of be an issue in the late second, early third sets against Monfils, as he went up a break early, then immediately gave it back, and it seemed like him and Monfils constantly had their hands on their knees where they were just exhausted. Now, Mensik eventually woke up, and maybe that's because Monfils was older and didn't have the stamina anymore. But either way, the point is Mensik's played a lot of tennis. Khachanov really hasn't, and I do think that's going to be the story of this match. Not to mention, I do think both players are pretty similar stylistically, and Khachanov done it for longer. I'm going to lean Khachanov here. I think he wins maybe a breaker in there, but I'm actually leaning straight sets. I think it's going to be relatively straightforward. I think that even though Mensik is a very good player, young player that I've been a fan of watching him for the last couple months, I do think that eventually the fatigue will be too much for him to overcome. And even though he was able to overcome it against Monfils, Khachanov been really consistent, really good in the event. I gave him out to win the event because I thought that his overall style of play would translate well to the courts, which I guess makes sense because Mensik plays a similar style and he's also in the final. But I'm not going to back out now. If you want to end up hedging the Khachanov outright that we gave out earlier in the week, you can at 2-1. Not a bad cash out option if you want to do that, but still, the point is I do think Khachanov is going to win. I am going to lean to straight sets. I'm going to lean to the games here at -2.5. I just think Mensik is, of course, a very solid player, but it's a big moment, and I wonder if the legs playing 5+ hours, give or take, more than his opponent in the final, is going to come back to bite him. I think it will. So I'm going to lean to Khachanov here, minus the games, and I'll take Khachanov in straight sets at a pretty good price, in my opinion, of +115. Moving on to the semifinal matches in Rio, you have Baez taking on Cerundolo, as Baez is around -158 on the money line, and Cerundolo is around +138. As for the actual game spread, Baez -2.5 is -105. Cerundolo +2.5 is -115. Over/under in games is 22.5. The over is even money. The under is -120. If you want to go for the set wagering, Baez in straight sets is +160. Cerundolo in straight sets is 3-1. Match to go over 2.5 sets is available at around +135, and the match to end in straight sets is -150. Now, the head-to-head between these two has been very competitive as they faced off 4 times. It is tied 2-2, and 2 of the 4 meetings, 2 of the last 3 actually, have gone to 3 sets, and all 4 meetings were on clay, so I can actually use that for the sake of trying to draw takeaways from the head-to-head. Now, only 1 match was in 2022. All the other matches were 2021 or before that, but still, the point is Baez has been in a slight advantage in the head-to-heads. He did beat him in Chile in 2021 and in Brazil in 2021. Not this event, though, but those both went to 3 sets, and they faced off in Bastad in 2022. Cerundolo did win in straight sets. Now, both guys have had a pretty interesting path, as Cerundolo went to 3 sets against a relative unknown in the first round, then killed Ramos Vinolas, and then ended up going to 3 sets against Lajovic in the quarterfinal match on Friday. As for Baez, he was cruising early in the event as he ended up beating Mutet and Diaz Acosta in straight sets. And then he faced off against Montero, and the match got interesting because he no-showed the second set and then regained his composure and won the third set easily with a double break 6-2. So the point is, I do think Baez should be favored. Now, do I think it's going to be a lopsided match? No. I think it's going to be very close. Simply put, I think it's going to be very up in the air. And as a result, I guess you can argue there's value on Cerundolo. But I'm kind of viewing it like the Cerundolo-Lajovic match, where I do think the favorite is going to win. but the price just seems off to me, where I don't think minus 158 is indicative of how close this match should be. And because of that, I guess the value's on Cerundolo, kind of like what I said in yesterday's show, where I said I thought Cerundolo would potentially win, but I thought the line was too big, so the value is on Wachowicz. I feel kind of the same way, but this time in favor of Cerundolo, where I think Baez should win the match, but this number's too big. I think you can easily find a better price in play, and as a result, I do think minus 158 is a nice pass for this game. For this match, I mean, I would lean to Cerundolo based on the actual money line price. I am going to lean to the games, though. I think the plus 2.5 is tempting at minus 115. I do like the over quite a bit, especially the set wagering. I really do like the over 2.5 sets. Cerundolo, I've mentioned it before. I'll say it again. He's been very up and down in individual sets. He can look really sharp and win a set 6-1 or 6-2, and then get buried 6-1 or 6-2 in the next set, and then regain his composure again for the third. The point is, though, he's been up and down, and Baez did have a pretty similar actual script in his match against Montero in the quarters. Give me the over 2.5 sets. 2 of the last 3 meetings on clay between them have gone to 3 sets. I see a similar story here. I really like that price at plus 135, so I'm going to take that as my main option for this match. I think Baez is going to win, but Cerundolo will not go quietly. It should be close. Give me an up and down match for both guys. Flip a coin, but I do think that Baez will eventually outlast Cerundolo in the third set. So maybe if you want to go for Baez in 3, I don't mind that for a pretty decent I'd say long shot play, but I am going to go with the over 2.5 sets instead as the safer option. And moving on to the last match of the episode, we're going to look at a matchup between Norrie and Navone. And Norrie is a massive favorite. He's around minus 550. Navone's around plus 375. Over-unders 20.5 for straight sets. And Norrie's around like minus 160, give or take. Norrie, we got an outright to win the event, so I'm happy with this current number. I think Navone is a very solid young player. It's why I took him to win Cordoba as a long shot. I recognize the talent was there. Then, unfortunately, ran out of gas against Baena in the first round. He started cramping. But still, point is, Navone is a solid player. Went through qualifying, ended up beating Coria in 3 sets. Good win there. Destroyed Hanfman 6-1, 6-2, and then ended up beating Fonseca, who was on a Cinderella run in 3 sets, avenged the loss he had against him in the only head-to-head meeting in the past. But the point is, I do think Navone is a good player. However, Norrie's defending champion, and he's been really good in this tournament. Now, he did drop a set. He screwed us over in the quarterfinals against Seaboth Wild by not winning in straight sets. However, all 6 out of 7 sets that he's won, in each of those sets, he's dropped to less than 4 games. So Norrie has been destroying people in sets that he has been fully engaged in, and I think Navone is going to lose because of it. Navone had an emotional win against Fonseca in the very pro-Brazilian crowd, and I do think that you can argue with this being the biggest match of his career, being in his first ever ATP semi. Maybe the moment will be too big for him. Maybe fatigue will be an issue. I just think Norrie's the better player. I'll take the defending champion to get the job done. The issue is finding value because 550 for the money line and once again, minus 160 for straight sets. There's really no value on that at all. The question is, do I think Navone can actually win a set or make it competitive? I think maybe he'll make one set competitive, but Norrie's a lefty, a unique angle for Navone to deal with, and he is the defending champion, so he's very comfortable in Rio. I just have a hard time picking Navone to pull off any surprises here. I think Norrie's going to win. Maybe a breaker in there, but I'm not even sure Navone wins a set. So I'm going to lean to Norrie here to get it done in straight sets. Not a great opinion. Not really a bettable match, to be honest, based on the price points. Maybe if you want to go for the over, maybe a team total over on Navone, and you want to give him the benefit of the doubt of keeping it competitive, maybe you can do that too, but I do think Norrie will eventually win the match and advance to the final. Hopefully so, because once again, we have him as an outright to win the entire event. So hopefully Norrie gets it done. Now, that's going to wrap it up, though, for the actual previews of the Saturday matches. Now it's time for the lock and dog picks. But before we continue that, going to have another quick word from our sponsor. We're brought to you by Hall of Fame Bets. Win bigger by betting smarter NBA season with Hall of Fame Bets. Sports betting analytics platform parlays, player props, and game lines. Research every NBA and soccer bet with historical stats and data. Enter any parlay data, and Hall of Fame Bets is a revolutionary prop optimizer tool to get hit rates broken down by leg, as well as an expected probability for the entire parlay. Sort all players by hit rate for any bet to learn which players are hot and which picks have value. Stop betting in the dark and join over 30,000 users researching with Hall of Fame bets to craft more intelligent, data-driven parlays. Download the Hall of Fame bets app for the ATP.com. Use code SGPN to get 50% off your first month today. Start researching, start winning with Hall of Fame bets. Welcome back, everyone, to the Tennis Gambling Podcast. Just finished recapping the Friday matches and previewing the Saturday matches. Now it's time for the actual lock and dog picks for the show. Starting off with the lock, I am going to go to the final in Doha, and even though I do like Mensik quite a bit, and even though it might be dangerous because we already have an outright on Khachanov to win the tournament, I am going to go with the spread as my lock, minus 2.5 games at minus 130. Simply put, Khachanov has been dominant so far in this event, as he has not dropped a set yet, and Mensik looked exhausted in his match against Monfils. Yes, he got it done, but the fact is he's been playing a bunch of matches with not much time off in between. It's the biggest match of his career, and you are looking at a guy who I do think can struggle in some of these longer rallies as the match progresses. I do think Khachanov's serve and Mensik's serve are comparable, but I probably would lean to Khachanov's consistency a bit more based on first serve percentage. But still, the point is Mensik's in a big match here, and I do question how his stamina is going to look in this matchup. And as a result, I think Khachanov's going to look comfortable. He's not dropped a set yet. I think he's in line for a good showing here. Give me Khachanov to beat Mensik, in my opinion, his younger form, as I see a lot of similarities between the two of them. But I think that Khachanov is obviously the more polished player. Give me Khachanov to win in straight sets in general, but I am going to go with the minus 2.5 games just in case. I think even if we see Mensik win a set, we saw him lose to Monfils 6-1. There's a chance that he punts a set in there, or mentally things go poorly and he kind of self-destructs. Couple ways to get there, but give me Khachanov, minus 2.5 games at minus 130 as my lock. For my dog, I am going to go to the match in Rio between Baez and Cerundolo, and I alluded to it before. I really do like that over 2.5 sets at plus 135. Cerundolo's gone to a deciding set in 2 of the first 3 matches in the event, so he's no stranger to going deep, and we know that his style of play can be very up and down in actual matches, and you might see him look very sharp in a set, then really, I'd say, dull in another set, and then he'll wake up again for the third. But Baez did the same thing in the third set, or in his 3-set match against Montero, because he was very good early, then punted the second set 6-1, and then woke up again in the third. I can see each player kind of taking turns to find their form, and that might result in a 3-set marathon. But the fact is, Cerundolo has been involved in a couple of 3-setters recently. Baez went to 3 sets against an inferior opponent in the quarters, and the head-to-head's very close, tied 2-2, and 2 of the last 3 meetings have gone to a deciding set. So the point is, I do think you're looking at what should be a competitive match, a match that should come down to the wire, and it's plus 135 for the match to go 3. We saw all 4 matches in Rio go to 3 sets on Friday. So the point is, I do think you're looking at a spot where this should go the distance. Give me the over 2.5 sets here as my dog. So once again, the picks for the show, the lock's going to be on Khachanov, minus 2.5 games at minus 130, and the dog's going to be on Baez and Cerundolo over 2.5 sets at plus 135. That's going to wrap it up for the show. We're back once again, potentially to go through the matches in Los Cabos. We'll see, because there's one match left that's going to be taking place later on a Saturday night. So maybe I can get that episode in. We'll see. If not, then we're back for the tournaments, or I should say the final in Rio. But until next time, though, good luck to all of you and all of your bets. Bye, everyone.